everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of The Critics. Today, I have a special guest with me, and I want to introduce Jamie. How are you doing, Jamie? How's everything today?
Everything's great. How are you, Vinay?
I'm doing great. Hello, everyone. My name is Vinay Raman, and I am the CEO of Carmo. We're a company that takes and visualizes human intelligence using data and analytics, and allows you as a leader to find out what's happening with your people so you can really lean in and lead more effectively. And the topic of today's episode is how to find 20% more profit in about 60 minutes. That's the length of our podcast today. So in this episode, Jamie and I are going to walk through some of the ways that you can start to look at data in a way so that you can understand how to unlock additional profit with your people. But first, I would like to introduce Jamie a little bit more and why I brought him to the show. So, look, there is a lot of challenges out in the workplace today. Companies are trying to find the right people, retain the right people. Some people are paying more money and seeing sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. People are changing their cultures, shifting cultures, trying new programs. I've heard of companies offering bagels and pizza and gourmet meals and Thai food and all kinds of stuff to keep people coming back to the office. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to how people feel. If they feel like they're treated right, they're probably going to come back. And I don't think there's anybody who probably gets that better than Jamie, because as a career coach, he's constantly talking to people about what they're looking for and kind of matching them with companies. Jamie, is that a good way to talk about sort of like in an abstract way, really kind of what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the introduction, Vinay. I appreciate that. And yeah, as a career coach and somebody who's spent the last 12 years, so kind of just to share a little bit about my background. I've spent the last 12 years with several Fortune 50 companies, and I've hired people. I've built successful sales and operations teams. And what I've done is taken all that experience that I've gotten over the last 12 years of reviewing resumes and interviewing people and helping build LinkedIn profiles and taking it and now becoming a career coach myself with my company Jam Sessions with Jamie. And what I do now is I with my clients is I help them gain more traction on their job search. So I help them discover what they're looking to do next in their career. Maybe they've been laid off and they're wanting to do a career transition, or they're wanting to get into something else and they don't know necessarily what's going to make them happy or where their skill set can go ahead and be applied for something else. So that's kind of what I do with my clients is I talk to them, I help them build a resume that helps them showcase their skills to find that next job that they're looking for and what's ultimately going to make them happy, or how they're going to be able to nail their next interview so they can go ahead and make that transition or maybe level up into that next position they want to get into, and help them just become more visible, get out there more with their LinkedIn profile, get more people seeing who they are so they can make an impact and do it ultimately as something they really want to do in the long term.
Yeah, and actually there's a bunch of questions that are going through my mind, but I actually want to set a couple of ground rules for how we run this thing. First of all, we've got a bunch of people who are connecting in. First thing I'd ask is I'd like to make this an interactive dialogue as opposed to just Jamie and I talking, because I think if you're spending some time listening to us, please chime in and ask us questions. But let me start out first with asking who you are and where you're connecting in from, because we've had people connecting from all over the world and helps us understand as we're discussing topics, kind of who's asking and why, and maybe even where from. So love for you to type into the comments. Usually on the right-hand side, you'll see a comment box, whether you're using Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Just type into the comments who you are and where you're connecting in from.
Yeah.
Jamie, first question for you, kind of just like an opening question here. There's been a lot of changes in the marketplace in the last couple of years.
Really, it has.
Yeah, it's kind. I feel like it's kind of flipped a lot of the paradigms on its head in terms of how we do things, how we expect to do things. This idea of how people feel, I feel like has come to the surface a lot more often now than it used to in the recent past. Do you feel like that's a true statement, or is that kind of just a lot of airplay that you get in media and magazines?
No, I think it comes down to how people feel. And there's not just what you're seeing with layoffs, but a lot of people are feeling stuck in their jobs. They're feeling like they're being micromanaged a lot, and maybe their boss or their manager doesn't understand them as much as they want them to understand them and what it is they truly want to do. So I feel like their feelings are a big factor when it comes to how people are, how people are handling things in their current jobs. Some people are in toxic workplaces and they want to get out because they feel like they're not being listened to. They feel like their boss only cares about, like you said, the pizza parties and things like that, when more people want to be self-developed and career development and get to someplace else. So there's a lot of people that are out of tune right now with their higher ups, and I feel like that's drawing people to wanting to do something different. And that's why you're also seeing more people just jumping into the job market now and joining all the fish in there and trying to find something different because they want to be someplace where they're going to be respected and basically be just be basically respected in their jobs.
Yeah, I'll say Jamie and I spent a little bit of time talking just before this episode, just to kind of share some ideas and some thoughts. And Jamie, I feel like to some degree I'm going to spill the beans a little bit here, and I feel like those emotions, which we've kind of talked a little bit about already, is kind of the key to a lot of what we're going to see in terms of how you can unlock profitability. I do want to call out a couple of people who've already chimed in. Crystal Ortega from Michigan. Hey. Hi there, welcome. Thanks for joining. I got another LinkedIn user who is a holistic life coach from Wilmington, Ohio. Brentley Russell from Lake Oconee, Georgia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. And John Gakobo from Nairobi in Kenya. Thank you all for joining us, and anybody else who's joined us. I'd love to hear where you're from. Crystal, the holistic life coach, Brentley, John, I'd be kind of curious just based on what Jamie just said. Do you feel like emotions are kind of playing a bigger part in the whole job employee-employer connection process? Do you all feel that as well? I'd love to hear just kind of yes or no and more detail. Jamie, let's follow on to that question a little bit more. These emotions are, I think, about a fit, right? If the emotions of the person they're looking for a role, the people who are looking to hire someone to that role. Tell me a little more about kind of what you do as a career coach and helping them navigate kind of what they're sort of feeling on that inside there and that alignment there. Because I don't think it's as much the woo-woo kind of stuff it used to be, 15 years ago. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair statement. I mean, when I work with people, what it comes down to is a lot of people kind of think they know what they want to do next, right? Or they know what their skills are and they feel like, well, this is the path that I have to go because this is what I've done. This is what I've done my whole career and this is what I'm good at. But what people don't realize when they start thinking a little bit more into how their skills can translate to some other types of positions and maybe some other types of industries, they may ultimately find something that piques their interest that they've had a passion for, but they've never really been able to do it throughout their career because it's just something where they've always thought, well, I just have to climb this corporate ladder and this is the route that I have to take based on what I've done. That's not the way that really people should be thinking. They should be thinking, what is it something that I'm going to enjoy doing? What is something where I can take my skills and really apply them? And how can I make an impact and really be a part of an organization that I not only care about, but also cares about my values as well. So it can be a good match together for both of us.
And I think that's the piece that I want to start to focus in on today in our conversation, right? That place where I call it exposing the Superman suit, right? I mean, I'm wearing the sweater and the shirt, and underneath it, I tear it open, and the Superman, suit is underneath. Well, I think that's a win-win for everybody. Is if that individual who is working at a company, going into a company, working for a company, moving up within a company, or moving laterally when the company is able to pull open that Superman shirt, Superwoman shirt. So that the superhero comes out, because now the company also and their customers start to benefit from it. And if we're able to tap into that feeling of that individual, that kind of brings out that superpower capability, that's a win all the way around. Is that the way you see it?
You're right. Yeah. When you're in a company, it's everyone likes to be recognized a certain way, right? Everybody wants to be talked to a certain way and how their bosses recognize them. So when you can uncover what someone's doing good at, and maybe, maybe somebody's not doing great in every type of, key performance indicator or metric, but if you can tap into what they're doing really well with, and you can recognize those things, and then you can take those things and say, well, hey, can you help out other people with what you're doing really well? But I see that maybe this is an opportunity here. Do you mind working with somebody who's doing great on this stuff? You start really getting that person to understand, like, you're not talking down to them and you're not saying, hey, this is what I need you to do, this, and this. You're working with that person to understand what it is that's helping them make an impact in your organization. And then you're pairing them up with somebody who can help them take their job to the next level and really help them stand out. And I think people respect that, because then they know that their boss really wants to focus on the development of that person as an employee altogether.
Yeah, so I think that's what I would like to kind of show you all here in a little bit. Jamie and I'll kind of walk through and maybe have a little bit of discussion. I'd like to show you some visuals based on data. So you can start to see that if you can start to tap into those superhero capabilities of individuals, oh my gosh, that's when you start to hit light speed. Magic starts to occur.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of comments that have come in here. Brent, so thank you for that. Brantley Russell, dynamics have really changed with younger potential employees. Seems that pay is not always what attracts them as benefits. Time off. If they stay in one role for 6 to 10 months, that now is the norm, since they are looking for a quicker climb in promotions. Right. Jamie, any thoughts or comments to that regard?
Yeah, I love that that comment, actually, because pay's not always the end all be all for people. Sometimes it's the full benefits package. And that's what I try to convince people too, is you got to know where you are in your career and what it is that you're wanting, right? Sometimes maybe it is money, maybe that's the end all be all. But for a lot of people now, I think that the dream job has shifted, where people are looking for more time off. People want that work-life balance. People want to be able to work for a company where the company's continuing to invest in the employee and help develop them and get promoted faster and not linger in the same position. So absolutely right. Money's not always the end all be all when it comes to what's going to drive somebody to want to perform better or want to be a part of the organization.
Crystal agrees that the emotions are starting to play a place in the workplace. She said, in my own conversations with people, they certainly do. And I think, Jamie, that's kind of what you were going to as well. Other linked, it's labeled as a LinkedIn user. I said, I agree with Jamie in as much as alignment of personal values, sense of life purpose, and goals with the organizational purpose will free the individual to their best. Bagels won't be necessary. I don't know. Bagels get me to go pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a good cream cheese or something like that, probably get me to go too, maybe.
But I think the point is, I think there is a superpower to be unleashed if we can start to embrace those. And I think a lot of words that, again, 15, 20 years are kind of just these woo-woo, kind of touchy-feely words are really kind of coming to the fore, where if we can start to adapt and understand as the leadership what those are coming in the door, and we can kind of align, build some congruence with what they want and where we're trying to go. Again, that's where the magic occurs. Thanks for the comments so far. Great stuff. I'd love to continue to hear some of your thoughts about what either Jamie or I say. I'm not looking for agreement. I'm looking to hear what you all are hearing, or maybe where you'd like some more clarity. Jamie, I'd like to show some of these graphs that we've talked about, and maybe kind of walk them through how they can take a look at, use data to see the emotions of their people. Is that fair?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Give me a second. This technology always supposed to work really fast, and sometimes it does. Give me a moment here. Let me share.
Yeah, while you're pulling that up, just want to thank again everybody in the comments for talking here. I know a few people who I'm connected with. Crystal, thanks for being in here too. You've always been very supportive, so I'm glad that you were able to join. And just good to see everybody in here and talking about this important stuff and just connecting.
And I saw, hey Vinay, it's Dale Kirby. Hey Dale, how you doing? Good to see you. Let me share my screen here.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, so got an opening screen here for our episode today. Let me walk you through what you're looking at here, and kind of how you can. We call these empathy graphs, and these are all based on real live data. We've changed some of the details, the names of the person and where they're located in the company, all that kind of stuff. But for a quick overview of this, the average person in that role, so we do apples to apples comparisons here. We'll take data and we say everybody in a, like a residential electrician role, junior residential electrician, we compare all those people together because junior residential electrician should not be compared to a commercial electrician, for example. Two different types of people or two different types of role. But we shake all those people and we kind of show how they rack and stack against their role. So the average person's got a 50. In this case, Patty's got a 45 out of a 50. Let me show you that visually. This blue area represents how Patty is doing compared to the average, which is this dark gray here. So you can kind of see how Patty's doing. Dark gray is how the average employee is doing in this same exact role, how a person in this role is doing. If this whole area here were completely blue, that would mean that Jamie is scoring 100 on every single dimension. And these are just, I might almost say, what are we calling these dimensions don't matter, because people have got software and you're measuring whether it's number of closes, the annual contract value, calls taken, call length. Those KPIs don't matter. It's just KPIs, really, at the end of the day. We take all those from different systems and build this graph. Jamie, I'll kind of throw it out to you first, because I've been doing a lot of the talking here. We see that Patty, in this case, is a 45, slightly below average. But looking at this graph here, we can see that she's slightly above average in her skills assessment, but she's a little below in how she drives her vehicle and her driver behavior. And her net promoter score, her customer service score, is below average as well. What kind of comes to mind to you in terms of what's going on for Patty? What's happening in Patty's head?
Yeah, so I love this graph here. I love the web format and everything. And what we can kind of see on here is that Patty's doing better than 57% of her colleagues and her coworkers when it comes to referring people and doing the tech referring, right? We can see that she's doing better than the average, 57% better than. And we can also see, too, when it comes to her skills assessment, she's doing better than 63%, right? So she's really doing great on those two things, or better than average, I should say. It doesn't necessarily mean great, but she's doing better than the average, right? But what this is really opening my eyes up to is seeing that she's doing a great job referring people, but is she really taking good care of those clients and those customers? Because if you look at her net promoter score, she's only doing better than 20% of her peers. So even though she's getting the referrals and has the skills and she's putting them on display, people aren't necessarily happy with the services that she's providing or the amount of care that she's giving them. So this gives the opportunity to have a conversation with Patty and talk about the things she's doing well in, and maybe trying to uncover what it is that she needs help with when it comes to her net promoter score, or maybe what's the driver behavior where she's only doing better than 37% of her coworkers. So this, in a snapshot, can really help a leader, not only a leader, but the employee as well, to see what they're doing really well in, and to also talk about the things that could be opportunities and how you can go ahead and make those improve so you can get a more well-rounded employee to be able to hit on a bunch of different things and it's ultimately going to help you as a leader get more profitability and more more achievements and more just a better well-rounded employee when it comes to several different metrics that you're focusing on as a leader.
Yeah, I'd like to ask everyone who's been chiming in so far. I mean, we talked about this idea of emotions, and there's this ability to unlock. I'd be kind of curious. I mean, you're kind of looking at this graph probably for the first time, seeing something like this. You heard Jamie speak about this a little bit. I'd be curious, what sort of emotions do you think are at play here in Patty's head? What do you think she's feeling? What do you think she's going through? I would love to see that in the comments. And is there anger, frustration, elation, happiness, excitement? I'm curious what your perspective on it is. And while maybe we're waiting on a couple of those responses, Jamie, I'd love to hear what you think. What do you think Patty is a really happy employee?
I wouldn't say she's really happy, no, because it could be something along the lines of maybe there's something going on in the job that's not making her happy, that's relaying to her customers. Because obviously, if her net promoter scores, maybe she's not putting everything into her clients because something on the job is really bothering her, and she's maybe tried to bring it up to a leader several times, and maybe that leader has not really helped her out with it, or maybe she just hasn't spoken up at all and she's been happy for a while. And this is something where you can kind of dig into and find out what is really going on. And if it's truly that somebody's not happy, well, what can that leader do to make them a happier employee that's going to ultimately rub off on the clients that she's helping out? So, she's doing her job and she's getting the things done in terms of the skills that she needs to do, but it's not relaying in terms of how the clients feel about her.
So I'm gonna hazard one, just as I've had an opportunity to look at a lot of these. I'm gonna kind of read maybe what I think, and I'm kind of curious what people listening in, if they see the same thing, or maybe they see a different story evolving. And Jamie, I'd love obviously your inputs on this. So I see that this driver behavior, as in this is how the average person is driving, and the idea is that here's very safe and here's less safe towards the center. So she's a little less safe than the average driver. Her net promoter score, her customer service score is less than average. And that makes me believe, the thought that comes to mind is that perhaps she does a lot of jackrabbit starts and a lot of harsh braking. So she's speeding through neighborhoods, going over speed bumps at 35 miles an hour. And people are seeing her drive through the neighborhood with a logo on the side of the van saying, XYZ company. And they're saying, I really dislike that. And Patty may be saying, wait, hold on a second. I'm a new employee here. I've got all the skills. I'm doing all these things. I thought I was actually doing pretty well here, but I keep getting dinged on my customer service and net promoter score. And the reason why is because of the way she's driving through neighborhoods. I'd be curious in the audience if you're seeing the same thing, if you can kind of see how that might be playing out here. Jamie, your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's good to kind of note that too, that we're talking about when we talk about driver behavior, we're talking about this particular person that's working for this company is a driver, and that's what we're talking about, is their behavior, the way they're driving, and the way that people see things. And it's good to note that when you look at the Net Promoter Score, like we talked about before, it could be somebody who is they're leaving the premises and they're not looking where they're going or whatever. Or they're being aggressive with their driving, or somebody's noticing them on the road and they're doing a lot of braking too hard and whatnot, and somebody is reporting it for not having good driver behavior. So I think all those things come into play, and you can see it on here that once again, the person is great when it comes to their skills, but the behaviors that they're doing are not emulating what the company wants this employee to be and what a model employee should look like.
So again, I'd love to reach out to the audience and see if you all are seeing the story, if you're getting some sense or a gut feel in terms of how Patty's feeling here. I might hazard a guess, because we're going to look at a different person in a second here. I might hazard a guess that there's probably some degree of frustration for Patty, because she thinks she's doing well, but she doesn't know how some of her behaviors are having potentially negative outcomes on her output as a technician in this role. And this is for a technician that is rolling out to see people in their houses. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't matter what the role is, because as long as it's people and data, you can start to see all of that. And we got a comment here from Crystal. I'd love to read through this. It says, I would dig into asking Patty specifically what her thoughts are by discussing this with her. Each person contributes. However, if as a leader, we don't ask particular persons exactly what they're experiencing, we truly cannot evaluate on the level of what a model team member will look like. Crystal, this is a fantastic point. I think for me, and I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts and yours, Jamie, I think this is a place for building some level of empathy and understanding as to what's happening with this person. I can kind of see where they're struggling here. And to your point, Crystal, this is, hey, print this out, put it on your computer screen, slide it across to Patty and say, what's happening here? And just kind of sit quiet. Crystal, is that what you're thinking? I'd love to hear. And Jamie, what about yourself? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I think that's you make a great point with that about letting the person do the talking, because a lot of times what leaders tend to do is they end up doing 80% of the talking and letting the employee do the other 20%, right? Where we should really turn this around and let her talk about what she sees in this graph, what Patty sees in this graph, and what she's noticing with these things, because this is eye-opening, right? When you show somebody this and you see all this data, you want to let that person and let Patty speak to what her positives are and what she's doing well and the things that she sees as her areas of opportunity. Let her talk why those could be an area of opportunity. She may say, wow, I didn't realize that my net promoter score was that low, or that I wasn't doing as well as my coworkers. And this may be eye-opening. And now it's a way for her to think and talk about what she thinks is going on. And if she says, well, I thought I was doing well this whole time. Well, obviously the graph and the data doesn't lie. We see it right there. So let's try to dig in as to what it is that we think that we can improve on and how we can create a plan together so we can not only help your net promoter score well, get your driver behavior better, but how can we, even if it's that you're not happy with the company, how can I as a leader support you so I can go ahead and get you to fill more of this gray area, so we can go ahead and hit on all these different metrics and really take you to the next level as an employee.
I agree. I want to switch to someone else because it's easy to look at this one's trying to kind of get wrapped in around this because, I mean, there are specific KPIs and metrics and data that's being collected in this particular industry, but I want to show you a different person and a different context. So here's Robert. This is all, again, based on live data. We've changed the names. I want to start like this. I'd love to ask everyone in the audience who's kind of listening in, seeing some of this stuff, what kind of employee would you how would you rank them in their performance against this role? Would you call them an A, a B, a C, a D? What? I'd love to see sort of that letter designation in terms of how you would grade them, and if you care to share how you came there or how you came to that. I was actually going to ask Brantley, just based on your question about the younger generations and how they receive this. I was going to ask you a question, but it looks like you got a comment here. We would always get a temperature of our service technicians each morning with check-ins, even at a 2 to 3 minute of how today. Got everything you need. You can find out real quick if employees engaged, prepared for the day mentally, or if you need to dig into more with customers. Our goal was 90 plus on net promoters with the employees on service routes. So, Brent, It looks like you're actively looking at this stuff to trying to gauge kind of where they are mentally and where their focus level is, and I think that's super important. Love to hear what everyone thinks of this. And Brantley, for you, do you see something like this as providing you greater insight into those younger generations who want to progress faster and saying, yeah, look, here's Robert, you're doing really well on the tech referring side, but look on that net promoter score on the driver behavior. Those are some of the things I need you to spend some time sharpening and getting better at before I can move to the next level. Jamie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I like what Bradley said too about, I'm having trouble seeing the comments here, but I appreciate you shouting that out. I like what Bradley said about taking 2 to 3 minutes in the morning, because that's what I always have done with my employees in the past, was always had a quick huddle. I called it a huddle with my employees and found out what they need from me as a leader that day. How can I support them throughout the day so they can have the best day possible? And I think that's so important. That's what really starts the day and gets those employees feeling like they're supported. And they're cared for, right? That you care about them and how they're doing. So in this scenario, and we're talking about what is this? This is Robert. Okay, so in this scenario, if I was to say, I would say Robert, probably a B. A B player, maybe borderline C. But when you look at this graph here and what they're doing, I mean, Robert's doing a great job with tech referring, right? I mean, his tech referring is, better than 71% of how his coworkers are doing. But if you look at around the rest of the gray, he's not too far off of the average. He's very close to touching that average, other than NPS, which is a little bit lower. This could be an employee who just needs some motivation, just needs somebody to talk to him more and just get him on the right track and just say, hey, push yourself a little bit more. You're almost there, right? They don't need a huge overhaul, but this is somebody who might need a little bit more motivation and a little bit more just being there for them and making sure that they know that you're there for them so they can go ahead and perform at the level that they know they can perform at.
So one thing that, I realized that I've kind of lost sight of a little bit here is we kind of got into this conversation. I think there's a lot of good things here. I mean, I want to kind of bring it back to the title of this episode, which is how to find 20% more profit in about 60 minutes. Something else I'd like to share with you is that you can look at this, and this white space around here is all the profit that's being left on the table. Consider that for all these things that are being done to run the operations of this company already today, the vehicle in this case is there, the chemicals, the supplies, the materials, whatever else that they need, the customers, the CRM systems, the software access, all that stuff is already there. Most of those fixed costs are already in place. If they go from this average to a really high performer, that's all profitability. Yep. I will tell you, to go from a 50 to 100, that's about 50% profitability that's being left on the table. There's a lot of opportunity here. If we could even just go to Robert here and say, hey, you're a fantastic tech referring. What if I just gave you, threw a couple spiffs in so that when you go to see some of your customers, I'll throw a couple extra bucks in for you if you just go and hang a couple of door tags and a couple of people just so we can get a couple more jobs. This guy loves doing it anyway. It's partly his superpower. Maybe that might be how you open that up. And that's where we talk about this idea of 20% more profit. Just by looking at this, there's easily 20% of profit that's being left on the table here just by leaning into what Robert needs, where his strengths are and his needs are, and leaning directly into that. Is that making some sense, Jamie?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, like you said, where the gray dots are is where the averages are going. And when you see how much is open on there, I mean, and in some cases, like you said, around the thing, there's 50% improvement areas, right? So if you find out what that person needs, and like you said if you throw in extra spiffs, or maybe you throw a little bit more to sweeten the deal, because when you look at the tech referring, like you said, they're already doing a great job in there. But if you throw in a little bit more, they could even do better than what they're doing already, which ultimately what that's going to do is it's going to grow your profits better as a company, and ultimately make the company perform better as a whole. So sometimes it's just digging in and taking the things that people are doing well in, and not losing sight of that, because you don't want them to have a drop off, right? You want them to keep performing well. But sometimes when you sweeten the deal and you throw more things in and you find out ways that will even motivate them further, and sometimes it is an extra spiff, you're going to get those people to perform well and move those metrics a little bit more. And ultimately, like you said, it's going to grow your profit in the long run.
So look, sometimes we have people who kind of join in a little late. And we're just kind of going through some graphs here to show how you can identify the potential emotions that people are feeling by looking at data, objective, unbiased data. And this is a representation of data from live people. We've just changed the names. I'd like to talk about this other idea around experience and how they're feeling here, because if we can tap into that emotion, we can really kind of light the fire inside. I'm going to suggest this idea. I'm kind of curious what the audience thinks, and then Jamie, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it as well. What if we've just got Robert in the wrong role, right? What if we've got him in this technician role who's doing operations, but really this guy's he's got the makings of a real great salesperson, right? And he just, growing up, I grew up in a family where my father was an engineer, and my mother was in the healthcare field. And when I told them that I was going to start a company and I was going to go into sales, they kind of looked at me sideways like, what's wrong with you? Robert may have never been in an environment where doing sales was ever kind of a profession, right? Or something that I wouldn't give a real thought to. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just, maybe that's where he started.
Yeah.
What if we've got him in the wrong role? Is this a way, maybe he's feeling frustrated because he's a square peg. He's a sales peg trying to fit into an operations hole. Does that make sense?
Right. It does make sense. And I think it comes back to, just side note here, I think it comes back to when I talk to my clients, the same thing. They may think that that this is the path that they need to go, but maybe they're destined for something else based on their skill set, right? So when we look at Robert here, we may see that, yeah, he's very good at referring tech, right? But he's in this, he's in this technician role right now, and maybe he's better off for a sales role because he's talking to people so well, and he's great at he's having conversation. Even though his NPS maybe is a little bit lower, his referring skills are very good. So maybe putting him in a different type of position that's going to make him happier and ultimately get him on a track where he can maybe get promoted in a different sense or find a different corporate ladder or career path to go up. Ultimately, is going to make Robert want to stay at your company more. And we don't know. We didn't talk about this, Vinay, but maybe this employee is also looking at other opportunities outside of the company, right? And we would never know until we dig into this and get to know what it is. And just a change of a position title or doing something that he's going to love may keep this more of a loyal employee and make this person happier and start driving more of those metrics where he can focus on.
Back to Crystal's point, right? Instead of just assuming, right, we kind of slide this across the table and say, hey, I just see that you're doing so well in the referring. And sometimes I wonder if maybe sales might be just a better role for you. Have you ever considered that thought of it? And all of a sudden, Robert's face lights up. Gosh, talk about you just put your finger on sort of an oil well at that point, right?
Right.
Because I think I've always found for myself, and I believe this applies to all, that we tend to do what we're good at, and we're good at what we like, and we like what we're good at, and kind of sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy there. If he's so good at the tech referring and referring jobs back in, maybe that he just never had an opportunity to do it. And if we gave him that space, holy moly,
True.
you might see the Superman emerge.
Yeah.
Brantley says, transparency is always good for employees to know where you stand with sales, revenue, profit goals. If communicated properly, this engages them as to why you must drive the numbers and how and where dollars can be saved, as well as reward, acknowledge employees publicly in group, and celebrate successes. And Brantley, I think I agree with that, right? Being able to call Robert out, if he's been around for 2 or 3 years, relatively fresh guy into the role, and starts, posting numbers like this that are kind of showing him in the upper echelons of performance. I think that's going to endear Robert to you. And I think, Brantley, based on what you're saying here, I think you kind of get that. And this kind of gives you a holistic view of all those things where there are the things to call out.
Yeah.
And Crystal says, I personally found that being transparent with people is key. I agree that transparency with people makes it easier for them to read you, right? And go places together, right? There's greater alignment.
I agree. Yeah, transparency is huge. I mean, when both people are being transparent with each other and you're being real with them, and you're not putting on a facade or anything, I mean, that transparency is huge. And I like what Bradley said too about the appreciating people and acknowledging people in public. I mean, that's something that I would do as a leader all the time. Is the day before, if people were doing well, or if the month was doing well, I would announce those people, and everybody would clap for them, and it would just be something cool that people wouldn't expect. And it shows that you're appreciating what they're doing, and it gets people to want to perform better for you.
I'd like to take a look at one last person, and this time I don't want to give a score, Jamie, you or I. I think let's wait. I would love to hear from Brantley, Crystal, or others what they come up with as a score. And I don't think there's a right answer here. I think it's just a starting point for a discussion, honestly. Got a different person here, Aaron. Driver behavior is on the high side. A little better on the net promoter and the customer service score than the average person. The average person in the role, but their efficiency and their tech referring are lower. Every time I see these areas where they're below the average, I suspect the further and further away they are, or below that average, I suspect the frustration level is increasing. I suspect that there's some frustration here. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a good way to just correlate the two, right? When you see somebody who's like this person, like I said, the NPS is great and whatnot. But yeah, when we're talking about just the metrics in general, when we see efficiency, when we see tech referring, when we see things that are lower than normal, there's usually it's not like a surprise. Like, why is this happening? There's usually rhyme and reason to it, right? And the further away they are from it, could mean, once again, more of the unhappiness, or maybe they're not. Maybe there's some things that there's some skills that need to be developed more, right? That we're not doing as a leader, and maybe that there's a disconnect from there. So once again, it's very eye-opening to see, are our employees truly happy, and do they fully understand how to do the job, and are we doing the right things as leaders to go ahead and give them the skills that they need? So the further away we are from hitting those averages, we know that there's reason behind it, and we have to figure out why that is.
Haven't seen any scores from everyone. Maybe you might be typing in. I would love to see, again, from people listening in, what they kind of think of this person in terms of A, B, C, D, E, or F employee, what they think and maybe why. The reason why is I'd love to just kind of see how you're seeing it as well, or if you see a different story than maybe what Jamie and I have been seeing. I do want to tell you that these graphs, if there's anybody who wants to see something like this for their own company, just type in 20% into the comments, and I'll get you in touch with the team where you can get an assessment done like this for one of your teams in your organization, so you can see the same thing, whether you have 5 people, we're limited to 500, but if up to 500 people, you can get a free assessment like this. We'll send it out in your direction.
Awesome.
Let's see. I'm sorry, Jamie, were you going to say something?
No, I was saying that's great that you're doing that. I mean, that's awesome. Like I said, I love this tool, and it's cool that you're offering to do this up to 500 employees too. I mean, this is really helpful. I mean, this is just a nice snapshot of what people are doing in their organization.
Yeah, we found that lots of employees, when they are able to see this, one of the things that we do deliver is scorecards. When the employees start to see this themselves and it's automatically sent to them, I will say for myself, when a person who is on my team who comes and asks me, Well, I don't know if I know how to do this. Well, first of all, the first thing is that means to me that the culture's heading in the right direction because they feel safe enough that they can come and ask, right? That's number one. Number two, if they're asking the question, how do I do something? That means they have a desire to get better and
Yep.
they're not clear on how to do it and they're asking for guidance, meaning that they want to get better. They have a desire. And if they're asking that desire, they see how there's a benefit for them.
Right.
That's a win all the way around. And that's one of the things that we've started to see a lot of is when we start putting these scorecards in front of people, showing them who are the top performers in that category, so they can go and ask them. They don't even have to come and ask me as the leader or the manager or whatever the case may be. They can just have an offline conversation in the parking lot and say, how do you do this? How do you get your net promoter score so high? How do you get your efficiency score? Those are the kind of conversations that I love when it happens in my company. And, and I think it's just beneficial for everyone. Jamie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that you touched upon that because I think when employees can help other employees, it's a win-win on both ends. It doesn't always have to be the manager or the leader saying, this is what you have to do, or how can I help you? It could be as simple as an employee saying, well, my net promoter score is only doing better than 30%, but I see somebody along the lines like Chance, who's on the left, who's a 78, right? Top 5. Maybe his obviously net promoter score is going to be better. Let's get Chance to pair, let's get Chance and Aaron together here, or not, sorry, Aaron's doing good too, but let's get Chance and another employee who's maybe struggling together, and Chance can share some things that he's doing really well that's helping with his NPS score, and share those things with this employee, and they can work together. And ultimately, it's just going to help both people out because they're going to be able to share different things that are working for them. And it's going to help overall. Once again, it comes back to the company being more profitable. Customers are going to be more happy. Ultimately, you're going to help your business in the long run.
A couple of comments that have come in from Brantley. Says, yes, having the right person in the right seat on the bus is extremely important. Not everyone can drive the bus. I agree. Not everyone is destined to drive the bus.
Very true.
Agree 100% with you, Brantley. And some people, that I think I will just leave that one there. Brantley also says, would agree with Jamie's assessment. Training may be an issue. Just be sure to document any training so you can hold them accountable later if needed. I might add one comment to that, Brantley. For myself, I've always started to believe that accountability is something that accountability is an internal concept. We've got to hold ourselves accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hold someone to a performance standard, but they've got to get themselves out of their chair to go do it. And I think your point is right on here, right? If we can say, look, in this case of Aaron, look, the next 6 weeks, I want to work with you on your efficiency. Let's spend an hour once a week where we're going to just review what's happening, do a post-mortem or root cause analysis or a feedback cycle, whatever you want to call it. Go take a look at what happened, how that led to you getting this efficiency score, so that over the next couple of 6 weeks we can get better. Yeah, I think it's fair to say to them, look, I'm doing this because I want you to be accountable to improving that efficiency.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying, Brantley. Jamie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. And I think accountability is so important, right? Sometimes we forget about that accountability piece. And it's not just, it comes down from manager, top down. So I think when it comes to accountability too, what I've always thought that's worked for me is, once again, it comes back to the employee who's doing well in something, and maybe there's an employee who needs to improve on something. Having the two of them, employees, hold each other accountable. So maybe you have one employee look at another employee, and maybe you partner them up together and you let each other go ahead and hold each other accountable. So if one person sees somebody else not doing the right thing, or there's something they can do better, they share that feedback with each other. And now both employees are holding each other accountable. And ultimately, once again, it becomes a win-win because everybody's ultimately trying to go ahead and do better in what they're doing.
So I'm going to stop sharing screens because you've probably seen these screens for some time here. But there are a couple more comments that have been coming in, and I appreciate this. I think this has really enriched the discussion. So thank you, Brantley, Crystal, and the others who've been chiming in here. Crystal says, without discussing with this particular person, I would personally grade the individual as a C to a possible D based on the metrics provided. I only say this as there is an obvious frustration issue, training situation possibly, and I would document all the conversations. Crystal, I think you and I are in alignment there. Right. I think I personally believe that everybody is sort of a diamond in the rough. It is my ability as a leader to see the genius in them. If I can draw it out, if I can sort of touch, we always talk about pressing people's buttons in a negative way, but if I can press the buttons in the right way and kind of all of a sudden the flower blooms, the Superman or the Superwoman emerges, that's the button I'm looking for. And if I have a way to find that with them through a dialogue over some visualization like this on a weekly basis, saying, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. How are you feeling?
Right.
Where are you getting stuck? Where's the friction? I think there's a real opportunity. Jamie?
Yeah, I agree. I think what it all comes down to is that you need to consistently have one-on-ones and just quick, whether it's 15-minute conversations with your employees, see how they're doing. Doesn't have to, once again, micromanaging and things like that. Doesn't have to be anything like that. But if you consistently show that you care about your employees, you're having these one-on-ones, you're having these conversations to uncover what things are going on, what do they need help with, how can you support them? That's ultimately what employees want to feel, is that they're being supported, that you care about them. You put your arms around them basically and say, I'm here for you. What do you need from me? How can I assist you? And that's what makes a loyal employee and somebody who wants to work for an organization for a long time and do their best when they know that their leader cares about them.
I want to make a point someone told me about. She said, I would, a lot of companies say we have a family feel. And this speaker was saying one time, he was like, I would not wish my family dynamic on anybody. He said, we yell and scream at each other. He said, I think we're kind of a normal family. He said, I would rather talk about teams, sports teams. He said most sports teams are run better than most companies are. He said, and Phil Jackson, as the coach of the Chicago Bulls, didn't tell Michael Jordan how to play basketball. He told him, here's where the team needs help. Can you lend a hand? Yeah. Here's some areas that I think you can use some support, and here's somebody who can support you, right? So whether it's Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and all the rest of the people on the team, they all came together. It's not people yelling back and forth saying, hey, there's this, we want to put that ball in the hoop. How do we get that ball in the hoop? That's what we're all supporting each other to do. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing a little bit from you. There is one comment here that came in from Dale, which I think is a very insightful comment. And I think we haven't touched on this. He said, Vinay, what I see with the Guru, the platform that you saw here, is a reason to dig into the story. It's easy to speculate about the person by the scores, but what is really going on? Are there external factors beyond Aaron's control? What is the trend over time? Again, what is the real story? I'd like to spend just a couple moments on this because I think this is a supremely important question. I'll talk about myself. I can't tell you how many times as a leader I've pointed one finger at someone and say, hey, look, I need you to improve this and spend some time, pull up your socks here. We got to get better here. But 3 fingers are pointing back at me when I'm pointing at them. And very rarely can I see that those 3 fingers are pointing back at me. I can see what they're doing wrong. And I think there's an opportunity here. I think that's what you're getting at, Dale, is that an opportunity to see the blind spots or kind of the yucky stuff that's going on that the leadership or the management, the company is placing on top of these people. Dale, I'm curious if that's kind of where you're going with it. My felt sense is that's the case. Jamie, are you seeing the same thing or reading it the same way?
Yeah, I'm kind of reading that the same way too, and I'd like to, if you can clarify in the comments there. But I'm kind of feeling the same way too about that. Is that, these managers are kind of, like you said, the yucky stuff that are being put on employees that we don't see maybe, that are the blind spots. And I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, and tying this back to what Crystal was saying, there's an opportunity for improvement if the team member is willing to take that step. I think this is an opportunity for all members. All stakeholders in kind of this whole conversation here, leaders, supervisors, managers, people, employees, people in the roles, to kind of opt back into this. And I think kind of bringing it back to the top of our conversation where we started talking about these emotions, right? If, we're talking about Aaron or one of the other employees, kind of starting to see where they feel, starting the conversation there to find out, Crystal, to your point, what's actually happening here. And as a leader, can I actually coach them to that place and find out what am I doing that I'm placing on top of them that's actually putting that glass ceiling in front of them and putting that artificial block or the friction that's keeping them from being the superhero that they could be. I like that word superhero, but is that appropriate? Do you feel like that fits, Jamie?
Yeah, I think that fits. I think that fits really well. And when we think about why people sometimes leave companies, they don't necessarily leave because they're unhappy with something. They leave because they're not liking their leader. They're not feeling supported. Usually, that's why people leave companies. They leave leaders. They want to be with somebody who's going to support them. So I think that's super important. And talking about what you can do, I want to just say something if I can here. One thing that you can do where if you need to hit that reset button sometimes as a leader, and you find out there's things that you can do better as a leader for your employees, one of the things that I always used to do every quarter or so is something called start, stop, and continue, where I do this in a huddle and I ask my employees, I leave the room for 10, 15 minutes and I let them compile a list of things. What can I start doing? What can I stop doing? And what can I continue doing, right? And then I come back in and it's so funny to see people just look at each other and say, wait, did our manager just leave the room and wants to put this together? There's no names who's calling anyone out. Everyone's just putting this list together. And then when you come back, it's very eye-opening for a leader to say, you know what, wow, I thought I was doing good with these things with my employee, but obviously everybody thinks that I can improve on this, but they like that I'm doing this. So it really lets you hit that reset button and start all over and basically focus on the things that your employees want to see so you can ultimately make them happier and ultimately get them to perform better as well too.
Yeah, I actually just put a post out on LinkedIn today about a story about a character. I mean, changed the name, obviously, about someone named Joseph. And the whole idea is that it was an employee who actually left a company that's one of our clients. And I think it could have been prevented. They were a high performer. They were doing a 60 out of 100. So they were significantly better than average.
Right.
And there was just one place that they weren't quite aligned with their management. They just kind of didn't get some of it. And I think if somebody had taken the time to sit down and ask them really, what do you need? What am I really doing? What am I creating as a friction for you that's causing frustration for you? If they just probably heard that probably would have changed that. And they, instead of spending $20,000 to hire somebody else and that whole time and loss of productivity and everything for the 6 months, 9 months to find somebody else, they could have just changed that course of action. And Joseph may have stuck around. So we see those types of scenarios all the time. And a lot of times it is that the leaders it's not necessarily 100% their fault that they can't see what they're doing, right? If they don't have something like that, that tool like that, start, stop, and continue. So I think it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
I would, there's one more comment here from Crystal, and then after that, Jamie, I'd love to kind of hear some kind of closing thoughts from you, kind of what you've heard, or I'd love to hear that from anybody in the audience. Crystal says, in my experience, I can only speak for myself. As a leader, any conversation has to be a two-way street. As a leader, I welcome the constructive feedback always. The team always knows this much. We've developed an honest, open relationship that allows the same performance indicators that hold us all accountable. Crystal, agree with that. And if we can start to show people where those high watermarks are and competition is always good, whether it's a competitive one-on-one, internal, against a team, whatever the case may be. Putting those aspirational goals in front of people with graphs and metrics, saying, hey, here's where we want to get to. If we do this as a company, we unlock this, right? This benefit occurs to you individually, as a team, whatever. I think being able to show that to people and having that feedback loop just causes greater improvement of the narratives that people have in their head, the leaders, the management, so on and so forth. I think so. I think it's a fantastic point, Crystal. Yep. Jamie, we've got a couple more minutes here. I would love to hear what you're thinking, some closing thoughts. But just before you get started, one question I would ask of everyone is, if you'd like an assessment like this for your company, there's no cost to it. Just type in 20% in the comments and I'll reach out to you. But just for listening in, I'd love to hear what you think of this. Was this a good use of your time and effective? Type in the comments. 10, it was an effective use of your time. 1, not effective. It's okay. Whatever the answer is, that's the right answer. So 10 is a highly effective use of your time. 1 is not very effective. I would love to see that in the comments. Jamie, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think this tool you have is so great. And I love what we talked about today, because I think many leaders and many companies can look at something like this and agree that there's always places in their business where they can be more profitable, right? And sometimes they don't know where to look or how to determine, how to get the data they need to go ahead and find where they can be more profitable. So I think something like this is just very easy to read. It lets the employee know exactly where they stand and what they can improve on. It's very eye-opening and it's not hard to understand. So I really loved all the things. I think this is great. A lot of companies could use something like this, and every company is always trying to improve their bottom line, right? But the problem is, how do they improve that bottom line? There's a right way to do it, and it all comes down to how they work with that employee, how they address that employee, and how do they treat that employee in terms of just that employee in general, to be able to go ahead and get that employee to be happy, get them to continue to develop, and then overall grow those metrics. So I think this was great.
Yeah. So, bring it back again to the top, right? Finding that 20% more. I think the secret to that 20% is understanding the emotions of your employees and kind of their perspective of the role they're in, where that friction is for them. And if you can find that, that's when the superhero can come out.
Yep.
Dale chimed in here with a comment, says, credit to Crystal, philosophically, most contributors want to do well in their work because it feels good. I agree with that, Dale. Back to the emotional component, creating an opportunity for them to fulfill themselves may be all that is needed to flip the switch on for performance. That is where the conversation can lead to a better way to lead and a better way to perform. Agreed. Creating that transparency, showing them how they can find that path of success, and being able to even just send them a graph, something like this, where they can say and ask the question, they can opt back in, and you can say to them, here's how you can do it. And
yeah,
just wanted to thank Zion for jumping in here, for Crystal, for Dale, for Brantley, and all the others who've chimed in, including John. Thank you so much for taking some time. Please do leave a rating. I would love to hear it, just for our improvement purposes. 10 is highly effective, 1 is low effective. 1 to 10 rating in the comments. And Jamie, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was glad to be a guest on your show. This was great.
All right. Talk to you soon.
See you later.